Welcome back, everyone. Grab your seats. So Liz and I just chatted a little bit between the morning and this session, and here's what we want to do. We had hoped to do some Q&A in the morning, but Liz got carried away, and we got carried away by her, which is fine. You know what? When you have someone who's a creative genius, just let them do their thing, right? You agree, right? But what I want to do is that we're going to start this session. We're going to take 5 questions, which we're not going to answer. Simply because we want to know, I mean Liz especially, but I too, want to know what's on your mind, and that will inform the way Liz presents and narrates some very unique clips of dances that she's done, which are very Jewishly themed. Not everything she's done has been Jewish, but she's picked out of her repertoire of a lifetime of work some dances that really have very clear Jewish themes that she's going to talk about. But right now, if you had a chance to ask a question, raise your hand, briefly, 30-second question, stand up, say your name real loud, and we'll hear it, okay? But this is all being broadcast or taped, so go ahead. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Kimmel, and I know a little bit about Dancers of the Third Age, but I wanted to know how, and which involves storytelling about people's lives. How do you turn movement into dance?
Great question. Other questions? Malcolm.
I happen to have been a participant in a choreographed dance by Liz Lerman called Still Crossing, where she invited the public to learn dance in a couple sessions, and then we were on stage. I'd like to know how you bring the public and how do you get your ideas? And Still Crossing was about immigration, and you were so farsighted.
Great question, Malka. Thank you. Others? No? Good. Tom? I'm just looking firsthand.
I want to know how you relate dance to resistance.
How do you relate dance to resistance? Is the question. You get the last one.
I want to know why the book title is An Insomniac's Guide. So Liz was saying earlier that her book title is Shape and Movement, An Insomniac's Guide to... Oh, I want to know why it's an insomniac's guide.
Yeah. Estelle.
Hi, I'm Estelle Queen. I wanted to know how you made the transition from classical ballet to dance, modern dance, movement.
Okay, last question, Kay.
I want to know how you use dance to sustain energy in the face of grief and suffering.
Okay. How does dance sustain you in times of grief and suffering? Okay, Liz, it's all yours.
Actually, I'll use this one. I know Sid said I wouldn't answer them. I just want to just quickly say a couple things from these questions. They're really, really good questions. There is a form of training, both in dance and in other places, where resistance actually leads to flexibility. I mean, so on the most personal level, like the most molecular level of the body, if you move in resistance in a particular way and then release it, you release so much. So that's one thing, and again, when we think about concentric circles of how we want to be and what are we practicing, because I did want to talk to you all about practicing. Like, we practice all the time in dance, and I don't know, when people think about practice, they think, oh, you're just in repetition. It's true, we repeat a lot of things. But also we're practicing how to be creative. We're practicing what behaviors do we need in order to practice or to be the dissenting community we want to be. And so we need to, even though what we did today, like just the fact that you did all that means the next time we're together, we're going to be able to advance our bodies and our minds together. So that was just because it's so there. Yeah, and I'll just say that I didn't do this, but I thought I would end the book with a page that said an insomniac's guide and cross out insomniac. Then a choreographer's guide, cross out a choreography. Then a mother, cross it, and end up just with Liz Lerman because I didn't do it, but it's a good question. Yeah. Also, I am mostly want to focus on the Jewish, what I consider to be explicitly Jewish work. But once we were on tour, we had just premiered a new work called Ferocious Beauty Genome about genetics. And we went to Duke University where they gave us a week to fix it. Because after you premiere something, you got to fix it. And then we showed it again. And while we were there, because the piece involved genetics, we got to work with all the scientists on campus and a lot of the science students. So after the show, this young science student who I'd had in class earlier came up to me. He was ecstatic, and he started saying, "I just love the part." And then he showed me, like the dancing part, as he could replicate it. And then he said, "I know what it was about." And then he named this really complicated biological process. Okay, this dance had nothing to do with that process. But what it made me reflect on is he must have thought he could bring his science self to the theater. So does he always bring his science self? And then it made me think about us. Are we Jewish mostly when I show you my Jewish work? Are you not Jewish when I'm showing you the other work? When do we call on that? How do we call on that? How does that work? And I don't have an answer, except to say that I want to start with the most recent piece that I've made, show you a tiny clip from it. After I did the first work in progress of it, it's about witches. I'll just tell you, it's about witches. And I did the first work in project out in California at Sonoma State. The first hand up was from a Jewish woman, and she said, "Are you going to put Jewish witches in it?" Because there weren't any. Well, there were. I mean, we're witchy. But anyway, just to say that the desire and the yearning for seeing ourselves captivated in art and culture is huge. My father, who actually was angry at the Hasids most of his life, could not pass up a sculpture of a Hasidic dancer without buying it. What was the real, do you know what I mean? He just wanted to see himself. So I get that. I was on tour in Scotland and went to an exhibit called Wicked Bodies, and it was 500 years of drawings of witches. I went in, I didn't care about witches. I cared a lot about older women because I myself was becoming one, and I'd spent so much time with older people. I wasn't interested in witches. By the time I left, I was entirely engrossed. This exhibit was in most of the drawings by men, mostly by people of the church. I joked later, I said, if I only brought the pictures to the present, it would be the most pornographic thing I ever did. I mean, you cannot believe how people were viewing this. Well, you can, because these drawings led to the murder of thousands and thousands of women and also men over a period of some 300 or 400 years. So I decided to find out more about that. Made a project called Wicked Bodies. It took me a very, very long time to bring, partly because of COVID, but also because I couldn't get the narrative right. At first, I thought it was going to be about someone who was collecting witches' knowledge because he wanted to sell it to corporations. But in that view, the witches were too passive. I wanted them to be not passive. So we ended up with a partial story about every 500 years, we get a new narrator in our traditions, and it's the witch's job to choose that narrator. And so the dance is the witch of care, the witch of love, the witch of resistance, the witch of, and then one of those was, that's how I sort of set it up. What you're going to see first, I got to be an artist in residence at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco, and we did an actual, first time ever, like a retrospective with myself and a visual artist. And they were going to present the piece, and so we built a little sort of trailer. So just to give you a feeling of how this works, the imagery in this includes performances from a couple different places, especially Jacob's Pillow, but it's like 4 minutes, and we can start it, even as I'm talking, because the opening repeats itself. It's designed for a museum space, so you'd come in and you'd see this, and you could stand in front of it for quite a while. All of the imagery here is rehearsals, different experiments, attempts at trying to figure out what we were doing, and then eventually you'll see part of the dance. it'll get bigger in a minute, you guys. I know you kind of just have to take in the visuals and just sort of receive the imagery. And then in a minute, you'll see.
Introduction of the witches. Yes. Wow. The ancestral witch. The lifeline through lifetimes. The witch of tea. Transformation. Transition. Trickery. The blood witch. This witch's cells remember every kiss. The witch of in-between. The water witch. The witch of blackness. This witch carries the wind in, in their mouth and resuscitates those who need breath against the weight of the knee. And the witch of survival. This witch carries a true story, the story of Agnes Sampson, a common woman who was branded as a witch and tried by King James I of the Bible and tortured. I play James, and we relive and reenact this ritual of torture every year.
A spell for forgiveness. Sit with me before the jail keeper comes.
Did you know that catfish are in every continent? Tear up the floorboards of your living room.
Just listing all the spells that exist in the piece here.
To leave the body.
Which I consider also prayers.
I detach myself from myself.
I have music in my
I rest above and below.
Spell for leaving the body when murdered by the state.
But not within.
A spell for healing when the water is
I
rising.
envision myself devoid of all emotion and motion. I am not even a vessel, so unmoved am I.
all day long.
I rest on the hill above and watch. My flesh
She has a lot of female friends. They boil the herbs, they cool the fevers, they heal the infections, they walk on their hands and talk to their pets. They practice medicine in back alleys. They have a crooked nose and an ugly smile.
I will pray to expand how we archive, to include blood memory, everyday gestures, and the moment when two smiles meet. I will pray for one more day.
So I'm going to come back to Wicked Bodies. We're going to keep getting, I hope you guys are all getting up and down because we're going to be watching different things. We can take that out. Yeah, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Everybody, thanks to Ken who's keeping all this going. Just amazing. So I hope you're already getting questions or thoughts. I want to just read to you a little bit about the witch's impact on me in this new book, and also to bring you to some ideas about that might get at some of the questions you answered. It's in the author's note, and what I'm trying to do is explain why in this book that's a lot about, I'll get into it, shape and momentum and the uncertainty principle and things like that. I wanted the witches, so the witches introduce each chapter, and I'm making a case for that. And I say in the author's note, I need their help with the enduring entreaties of my life. 1, pay attention to our amazing bodies and what they are telling us all the time, whether through pictures in our imaginations, pain in our muscles, moving closer with enthusiasms, discomfort in the way we are sitting, eyes closing in terror or disgust, measuring the urgent need to run away from another person or a problem, shaking in terror, trembling in desire, open in love to all types. These magnificent attributes of ourselves are raising their presence at all times, but are often ignored. Not the witches. They translated these tiny happenings into occupations, mostly the healing kind, but also with a willingness to cross the boundaries of what had been normalized by institutional and cultural timidness. By including writing that emerged while trying to bring witches to the stage, I am hoping readers can enjoy the mayhem, the subterranean power, and the joy in their liberation as conceived by my own midnight ramblings or those concocted by the brilliant ensemble of artists who gathered with me to make this piece. I'll do two more. While we are paying attention to our amazing bodies, we might also notice where authoritarians take their first action of oppression. It's physical, and it is highly personal. Where you are allowed to go to the bathroom, when you can see a doctor, and about what, who you might have intimate relations with, when and to whom you may speak in public, what medicines you are allowed to take and for what purpose, how you might clothe yourself. The witches have a history to share with you about the outcomes of demonstrating any way of living outside these prohibitions. And this is the part a little hard to take here. The accusations against the witches, evidenced in legal documents left behind by proud magistrates and judges, doctrines and court cases from almost every continent. It's just like the Nazis. They left all kinds of records, all of them. There's one book I read, this guy killed 800 people. He's so proud. He opens it with, "Dear gentle reader, I can't wait to tell you how I did this." You can almost every contain the attempt to rein in our relationships to our own bodily functions, as well as some of the rituals these bodies carry out in the name of healing, holding, protecting, praying, and yes, also dancing. Last one. Art in all its processes require of its makers an extraordinary determination to remain connected to human and mammalian practices often considered unnecessary by the central governing entities of political, education, religious, and economic pursuits. As I mentioned this morning to you, Estelle, and to Sai, that in times like this, your willingness to support the arts puts you in this place that is challenging. It's challenging. Perhaps it is why art has survived. It's objectively irrelevant, while also remaining the prized representative evidence of our hopes. My contention is that it is less the object itself and more the manner in which it is conceived, made, held, and shared that matters. The witches in this book reflect this belief. I brought them into existence through a long and arduous journey of art making that I refer to as choreography. But this kind of choreography is more than the steps. It's true, I needed the promise of a performance outcome as the container to hold these efforts. What we learned, discovered, shared, and carry out with us now is only available to me because of that endeavor. Readers might be distracted by the presence of the witches in the beginnings and endings of these chapters. It is a purposeful reminder that art is central and invisible. In this book, the witches carry that burden. So that's how I feel about it, and it was very nice to get to write it. It took me a while. It was the last thing I wrote for this book. Okay, we're going to move back in time for a little bit. I want to take you to a piece called The Good Jew. Somebody asked about where you get your ideas on all this. I was talking to a colleague of mine. He's a presenter, meaning he's someone who produces public events and performance up in Boston. This was a while ago, a long time ago. And I was saying to him, I just feel really guilty about some things in my Jewish life. I had married someone who wasn't Jewish. I did a lot of work on Saturdays, And I said, I just should put myself on trial. And he said, "Oh, what a great idea. Why don't you make that piece?" Sadly, or with gratitude, I agreed. It was a very difficult piece to make. I decided early on about structure. We talked about structure this morning. It was an actual courtroom. There is a prosecutor. There is a defender. All these people come in to decide whether I'm a good Jew or not, including Sarah, Abraham's wife, who's brought in by the prosecutor as an example of what I should have been. But I got really interested in this. Oh, I'm always interested in this story about God telling Abraham he has to kill his son. And so we decided to tell that story again. In my version, Sarah, she shows up in the court, but she says, well, how do you think the ram got up the mountain? She brought it in this telling. But I realized that if I was showing it to the public, a lot of people, first of all, don't know the story or might not recognize it. I said, you know that part? With the name of it. So in a lot of the art I was experimenting with, and I think it helped that I was trying to translate, was to tell the story first in the way we understand it to be, and then to retell it. And that forced me as an artist to use repetition and to figure out some things, which I loved. The second question engaged there, though, and this is a conversation I've had with particularly my African-American dance friends for years, is whose responsibility is it to know the culture? Like, she's tired of having to explain herself. She doesn't want to do that. And if I only showed work in Jewish places, maybe I wouldn't have to explain that story either. I don't know. But I kind of like the idea of trying to figure out what's the thing that might catch somebody and they'll stay with me in it, and how does that work? So I'm going to just show you a little section. We brought the Baal Shem Tov to court. And again, the prosecutor brings the Baal Shem Tov, well, for obvious reasons. But it turns out in the end, well, he gets the court's been very dead for a while. He gets everybody dancing. That's the part I'm going to show you, just a little bit of that. The whole court is up and going. And then again, he turns out to be on my side because he says, look, I'm a dancer and so is she. So what does make a good Jew? What does it? So I'm going to show you that. And then what follows is actually one of the things that the prosecutor brings. I wish I kept better track of my research. I don't remember where I heard this story. But you're going to see something, you'll see it's a dance storytelling style that I work with frequently, where the dancers are also talking, and you'll see that. So we'll do that. We'll skip that first one, but the next two, yeah, starting with the Baal Shem Tov, and we can end it a little early. It gets boring at one part.
No. Next witness, the Baal Shem Tov.
Founder of the Hasidic movement.
A peasant.
A poet.
A guru.
A leader.
A fanatic.
A mystic.
Go to the next one. That gives you a little feeling, the courtroom erupts.
Is what I mean by jumping. Everybody out of the barracks, he shouted, and onto the field. Anyone who's left will be shot.
A rabbi befriended a free thinker in Auschwitz.
We ran to the field. When we got there, we saw that there were 2 huge pits. Everybody must jump over the pits, he said. Anyone who doesn't make it will get what they deserve.
The people were starved, almost skeletal.
Even in the best of times, it would have been impossible.
Let us sit and wait for the bullets.
The rabbi said, if God has intended my last moment to be jumping, then let's jump.
How did you make it?
By holding on to the faith of my father, who was holding on to the faith of his father and his father before him. How did you make it?
I was holding on to you.
I don't know whether you'd like to pause for a second and chat. I have one more from this kind of period I could show, and then maybe we pause. It's so personal. You know, it's personal. Put yourself on trial. But I just want to say that the relationship to maybe art and ritual making, they really overlap. When I started The Good Jew, as I told you, I felt guilty, terrible, awful. Who was I? By the time I finished, it took 3 years. By the time I finished, I started to think, well, if you're going to meet a contemporary Jew, I mean, it may as well be me. So I mean, not to be arrogant, but like just to try to find your way of belonging and how that works. Chew with the next piece too. So I was commissioned. I'm the same age as the state of Israel. Well, actually, I'm a little older because I was born Christmas 47. And Israel is in April of 48. But I was commissioned to make a piece for the 50th anniversary, which I did because I was a birthday present to myself. And my father ends up narrating a lot of it, and it's quite an amazing work, I think. It was one in which the audience was on stage with me. I had a wander. If we were here dancing, there would be back in the audience out here a figure that's moving the whole time, and eventually ends and joins us, and it turns out that that person is Hagar's child. And so we get into, it ends with what's happening at Abraham's funeral, like what's going on in that cave. But the section I'm going to show you is from a performance at Dance Place. Somebody asked earlier, where can you see dance right now, since we don't want to go to the Kennedy Center? And Dance Place is one of the, well, some of you may want to, but just saying, if you decide not to, Dance Place is one of those places. So I'm just showing you one segment of it. I did a lot of little solos in between, and then this duet but we're just going to do the solo. Okay.
Pretend my body is a map of Israel. Here's Haifa, where Solomon sent and received his ships. And right here, Spot, where even tonight the mystics are counting the gates of the Omer. And right here, Eilat, with the hotels growing out of the Bedouin desert. Pretend my body is a map of Israel. The Gaza Strip, Tel Aviv, and here, right here between my esophagus and my trachea, this is where Abraham entered Canaan. Here's the West Bank. And this is where Jesus was born. And here, my heart sits on my diaphragm and between my ribs. My heart's job is to pump blood to all the corners of my body. My heart pumps 1,250 gallons of blood a day, so you do the math. How many gallons of blood has my heart pumped in 50 years? Maybe I should say, Shakyami, thank you for bringing me. Now the blood comes here, right here, through the gate of mercy. That's near the Wailing Wall. And then it drops down through a valve. That's why you hear that familiar thump, 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 thump sound. And then it comes down to the Arab quarter and goes out through the gate of Zion, out to all the reaches of my body, each little landscape, each place. And then miraculously, the blood comes back right here through the gate of Abraham. That's near the tomb of the patriarchs. Thump, 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 thump. And then down to David's gate, where they said, even in the Middle Ages, this is where the Jews used to dwell. My friend Rachel said, Liz, don't make your heart a metaphor for Jerusalem. Jerusalem is too cut, too divided, too fragmented. It'll mean you have a broken heart. I said, Rachel, it's impossible to be 50 and not have a broken heart. So thank you. Thanks. So should we pause for a minute? And where's Sid? Where are you? You can help with this. Here you come. Yeah, but we'll take a moment in case you have things you want to say about this, respond to this, ask a question about this. These early works, you get a feeling again for how personal. We're going to move into some other Jewish territory in a little bit, but yeah. Anybody, something you want to respond to or ask? Give you a second.
I'm Carolyn. I just had a comment maybe, but it could be a question too. I think it was maybe I was like an older teenager or young adult, and I remember reading Toni Morrison, Beloved, and I think that was the first time I heard this concept of like our bodies carry the trauma, and that was very powerful. And then to have you hear this many years later and to see yourself and your performance there, and just it was very powerful, and it's on a video screen. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm working on a piece right now called My Body is a Library, and we're actually working with librarians and working, because maybe the library is a body, but also this idea of where is our knowledge? Where do we hold it? Where do we carry it? How do we share it? How do we pass it? Yes, books, but how else? So yes, I'm glad you made that link.
Thank you. The using of your body as a map, for me, I don't know how other people responded, brought alive the connections, the biblical connections that we read every year, cycle song, and the connections. Brought using your body as a map of Israel, brought alive for me in a completely different way the connections between what we read annually, every year and year, all the holidays we celebrate, and the horrific tragedy of the many years. I mean, I started paying attention to the tragedy in Israel in 1966, and I don't think it is, I mean, it's, in one sense it's not worse, in one sense it's just as worse, in one sense it's more worse. And I felt that way of showing us the connections within that part of the world was just particularly powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. I did a lot of research on this, and when I premiered it, I was able to actually, there's one section where I actually say to people, now 50 years ago tonight, the guerrillas are fighting, and I actually take you right back to one of the Irgun moments. And then I say, it's not over tomorrow. When you go home tonight, it won't be over. When you wake up the next day, it will not be over. When you go, then it's over. Just, and to try to get people just to grasp the immensity of it all. It also turns out, I didn't know that about this part of my dad's life. My dad organized labor, and it turns out the AFL-CIO sent trucks over, and then they were turned into tanks after that. I'm talking about during the War of Independence, depending how you decide to think about all this now historically. So there are a lot of ways we unravel things, but yes, being the map was really important for me. Anybody else on any of this that we've done so far that you would like to reflect on? Right here.
My name is Martha. Sorry. My name is Martha, and I had the great good fortune to dance with Liz's company for over 20 years. And so it's very affecting to see. What brought to my mind was the story of, was it Jacob and Isaac? And we learned a little exercise, which we shared with community, which was a bowing. You would face a partner from a great distance, and one would be active and take a bow. You did it 7 times as you approached the partner. And the last one was all the way to the ground. And it was very moving. And we've performed it in synagogues, but also other faiths. And it always brought people to tears. And it was somehow, the other person would then take a turn. But it was about forgiveness. And that has always stayed with me deeply. So thank you, Liz. This is wonderful.
Now the two of us will start crying. Martha was my teacher at 17 when I went to Bennington. And I left after 2 years, but I had a very crazy life for a few years. But Martha eventually came and danced here with us. And I have an essay in the book about Martha, who is muse, mentor, mentee, teacher, and everything possible. What she's referring to was actually something we did in a Reconstructionist synagogue in Milwaukee the first time. It's the night we read about Jacob and Esau. And he's just wrestled with the angels, and then they bow, they come to the field, they don't know what's going to happen, and you have to bow 7 times, which is one of the ways, and each one lower. We had, it would be as if we had 2 lines of people stretching all the way around here and did this. I began to wish that we would just do it for families regularly when siblings are struggling, or anybody in a family struggling. But yes, thank you for that, Martha. You'll get to see Martha dancing in a little bit, because she's in one of the pieces. I'm going to move on. I want to get into for a minute what I would consider dances made out of trouble. The first one I'm going to show you is actually Shehekianu. It was a piece that I made. We did 3 different, we did Act 1, 2, and 3. The first act is what I'm going to show you, is called Faith and Science on the Midway. What I was thinking about at the time was, if I met somebody, an African American, for example, they might view me as the daughter of a slum landlord. That's not true in my case, but what histories was I bringing to the moment that we were actually meeting each other? And could they see me now, or was the history so bad that we could never get past the history? How is that going to work? So I thought the prayer bringing us to this moment was a way. So the Shehekianu prayer works its way throughout the piece, and you'll see one tiny version of it first. But the first act was the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, which was the first time we had an anthropology wing. And this is where we brought Otabenga, the pygmy. There was also 27 tribes from the Philippines that were put in order of their civilization, according to the anthropologist. I mean, the anthropologist, he's the MC of the piece, and he's just so excited about what he's coming to know. And Theodore Roosevelt is there. You'll see him. He's kind of a eugenicist. It's word for word. You'll see a tiny little bit of him. He has a much longer solo elsewhere in the piece. But there's also, when I was researching it, I was down at the Library of Congress, and there's something called Shifra, the Palestinian Jewess. And she's on the Midway. And the dance you'll see is taken verbatim from the dance I took off the
It's just that it's done by two people instead of one. And in fact, Martha, it's you in this. You'll also see, I'm just warning you, there's a big nose on Martha. The reason I do that is because the whole thing is about stereotypes. There's a medicine man who, pretends it's like a hip hop artist. So I really was pushing the question of, are we seeing stereotypes? Are we seeing history? But the Shehekiano prayer keeps coming up. So I'm going to show you two things. First, and we'll just run them in a row, this 1 minute version of Shehekiano, and then the bit about Shifra.
Wow. Praise for life, for sustenance, for being brought to this moment.
Self-esteem. Well, if you think the line was long to get into this theater, you should see the line out in front of the tent that possesses Shifra, the Palestinian Jewess, and her dancing cohorts, Princesses Raja and Raji. Those princesses. They don't possess the brainy bravura of, say our president.
My memory is that the European southern brunettes are not square-headed but long-headed. The medium-tinted Middle Europeans are square-headed, and the northern blondes, again, long-headed.
But they do have strong mandibular joints. Now this comes from sleeping in the same tent and drinking water from the same pail as their camels. It's an inbred thing we're just looking into. So without further ado, Princesses Raja and Raji, and their headliner, Shifra, the Palestinian Jewess.
The letter Shin symbolizes Moses, with his hands outstretched and his head between them. It can also depict a bonfire, the dancing flames spiraling upwards towards the heavens. The sound of hay is a mere exhalation of breath. It requires little effort, no movement of mouth, tongue, or lips. The Hess looks like a Torah scroll with a roof over it.
To help me with my research at the fair, I have an assistant, Miss Gibson.
My memory is that the European southern brunettes are not square-headed but long-headed. The medium-tinted Middle Europeans are square-headed. The northern blondes, again, long-headed.
Yod, the smallest letter, represents the metaphysical. In smallness lies essence. Nun, in itself, implies an outlook of hope.
So that's just a little piece of that. We performed this. It took us a while to make it. The second act is taken from our work in the shipyard. What was happening in the 50s in the shipyard at Portsmouth, where we had a residency, and the loss of the Thresher, which is the first major accident in our country where the submarine went down and everybody's lost. But we pair it with what was happening in the park by the White House and how they were going after gay men in that period. So we kind of set, just look, here's a look at two things. And again, the prayer winds its way through. And then the last section was complicated, difficult. It was the idea was a skin museum, and our skin was full of scars, and could we give up our history? Would we be willing to give up our histories in order to be in the present? Was kind of the question posed. I think that just because of time, if you can bear it, I'd like to do one more piece, chunks of it, and then we can talk about it. I got to meet Martha Minow first through a friend, but we both served with Bob Putnam in his Swaro seminar, which some of you may know about. He's the sociologist who writes about being better together. He pulled about 30 people together for 6 weeks. We met over time. Obama was in it, but he was a state senator at the time. Ralph Reed. It was a wild mix of people, and Martha and I got to spend a lot of time together during that. And so she was, at the time that this piece comes out, she was dean of the Harvard Law School and was sponsoring an international conference on international human rights for this in honor of the 60th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials. And so she called me up and asked me if I would do this, and I actually said to her, there might be a limit to art. I just didn't know if I could do it. And then she said, Liz, you don't understand. The people coming, they spend 365 days a year thinking about genocide. I'd just like to remind them that it's also about the body. So I said back to her, well, if you help me. So she became our research guide, which was magnificent. And I don't have, we can't get into it now, but she sent me to such extraordinary writers, herself included. I think one of her best books, Between Vengeance and Forgiveness, if you are interested, by Martha Minow. It is incredible. But also by Gurevich, I regret to inform you that tomorrow your family will be killed, which is about Rwanda. Samantha Power's book, America in the Age of Genocide. These are incredible books, and they are filled with metaphor for movement, actual movement, and things for us to bring into movement. I know that was a question earlier, and maybe after we look at this, we'll talk more about it. The opening section is really hard. I'm not going to show it. It's afternoon. It's beautiful here. We spent a lot of time trying to decide just how graphic to be, and there is a section where there's a lot of bullets and bodies falling and all that. I actually, if we were in the theater, and the lights would come down, and you could watch this, and you hear the music, which is gorgeous. I think you could have a relationship with it, but I think this way, not so much. So there is some, I'm not going to show it to you, but if you're interested, we can get it to you, online or something. But I am going to show you 2 sections because they have a lot to do with how we get into movement with these stories. The first is that is from Jackson's opening speech. For the trials, and some of you will recognize the language because you've heard it before. So Samantha Powers talks about something called upstanders, and she talks about it because she's talking about Raphael Lemkin, who coins the term genocide, who dies a pauper. He went every day to Congress. He was just, it's an incredible story. She calls him an upstander as opposed to a bystander. Now, this is the first time I had heard this. Subsequently, at my school, we did a whole thing on how to interrupt sort of domestic violence, sexual violence on campus, and it turns out there are all kinds of ways to be upstanders. The term is very helpful. But in this case, I got interested because actually it's physical. It's physical. So one of the things we worked on was how many ways could you get up and down out of a chair? How many ways, and it's hard. If I made people say, okay, I want you to take 50 counts to get out of the chair. 1, 2, your muscles, it's hard to be an upstander. And when we worked in communities with the same idea, because we partnered with Facing History in Ourselves, which is a high school curriculum on the Holocaust, and they were interested in having some exercises that they could use with students that were embodied. They had exercises, but nothing was embodied. And so we worked on a whole series of things around that, which I love. So the first thing you're going to see is that, how we worked with that in Jackson's voice. The second one, so I don't know how much of a setup there is. I think there's a little bit of a setup in this one, but for background's sake, rape doesn't become a war crime till Bosnia. It's not until the 1990s. That's the first time it's recognized. And so maybe I'll just say, I asked the 2 dancers who you'll see, I asked her to figure out how many times she could run at the judge. How many times could she jump on the table? How many times could she, I didn't tell her what it was about. I didn't say, by the way, you're a rape victim and you're trying to get seen. I didn't do that. I removed the subject matter. We talked about that a little bit this morning, add meaning, subtract meaning. I felt if I told her she was about rape, she would fall apart. She couldn't do it. It would be, and it would, I just be physical. How many ways can you physically get up on that table, and how many ways, Ted, can you push her away? And then I told them one was, of course she wept, just as I knew she would, and it's amazing, you'll see. And lastly, Martha is under the table in the courtroom, and I had Googled Nuremberg and poetry when I started working on this, and it turns out in Norse mythology, there are characters under Mount Nuremberg called Norns. These were my first witches. They are crones, and their jobs, listen to this, Norse mythology, their job, keep the waters clean, give legal advice to the gods, and decide who lives and dies every day by the way they weave. That's their job. That's why I got into the witches are busy. But you'll see Martha, and we played, the Norns were all around all the time, and you'll see us. So those are the two clips we're gonna look at now, okay?
Let me just add, for people who don't know the background, the Jackson is Robert Jackson, who was a US Supreme Court judge who was then appointed by Roosevelt to be the chief judge at Nuremberg. That's whose voice you'll hear.
Thank you very much for that. Yep. So we're skipping the first one. Go to the, it should say men on chairs, maybe? Yeah, and then we'll just go right into the other one when that's over.
Privilege of opening the first trial in history poses a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored, because it cannot survive their being repeated. That four great nations, flushed with victory and stung with injury, stay the hand of vengeance and voluntarily submit their captive enemies to the judgment of the law is one of the most significant tributes that power has ever paid to reason. This tribunal, while it is novel and experimental,
only those who have failed to learn the bitter lessons of the last decade can doubt that men who have always played on the unsuspecting credulity of generous opponents would not hesitate to do the same now. It is against such a background that these defendants now ask this tribunal to say that they are not guilty of planning, executing, or conspiring to commit this long list of crimes and wrongs. They stand before the record of this trial as blood-stained Gloucester stood by the body of his slain king. He begged of the widow, as they beg of you, say I slew them not. And the queen replied, then say they were not slain, but dead they are. If you were to say of these men that they are not guilty, it would be as true to say that there has been no war, that there are no slain, that there has been no crime.
A woman's 2 daughters, 4 daughters-in-law, and 4 granddaughters had all been raped. When the 12-year-old, the youngest, heard that her granny intended to tell me what had happened, the girl screamed out, attacked me, and broke my spectacles. They're cutting throats, killing and burning, the woman tells me, and raping. The word sticks in her throat along with her tears. At the time, she says, I barely knew what the word meant. In these circumstances, rape is not the same as violent sex. It is aggression carried out by sexual means. Remember, rape cannot be committed as a self-defense. No one can say the woman attacked me, so I raped her.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, thank you, yeah. When we did it, we premiered it at Harvard, the head of the criminal court was there, and his was the first hand up after we finished, and he wanted to know, was this because it took so long? And I got to just say, yes. Yeah, I realized I can't believe the time. So we have time for a couple questions, maybe, thoughts, actions, something that anybody has on their minds. I know it's a lot to look at, and I actually have a spell for forgiveness to show you, but I'm not sure we'll have time. But that would let you could go out floating. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lisa Traeger. Hi, Liz.
Lisa's one of our great dance writers and writes for the Jewish papers as well. We're so happy to see you. I'm so happy to see you.
Okay. Not a question, just a comment about spaces and how the work can make the space sacred. And I feel that dance always makes a space sacred, but you in particular have found a way to, bring that sacredness to spaces for people around the world. And it's really been so meaningful for me and something I think about a lot, how we show up in a space and what we bring to it. So thank you, Liz.
Thank you. I'm really touched and grateful for the chance to listen to you and to see the power and potential of politicized modern dance, activist modern dance. My question goes to whether you can comment briefly on whether the landscape of modern dance in your career has changed so that, in fact, you're not the only one thinking about dance in this way, but whether you can comment on the way that modern dance has changed across the country so that it contains the kind of messages you've sought to provide.
Thank you, and it's a great question. And one thing I just say is that the history of modern dance in this country is a history of Jewish performers and choreographers. We have made a huge contribution, and part of its radicalism is, I think, as I spoke about early this morning, I mean, I'm thrilled if people would be more bold. Against the backdrop of what I'm doing is postmodernism, which I borrow a lot of the tools from postmodernism. I love it, but there's a certain thing a minute where you obscure. It's kind of hit. It's ironic, So there are all kinds of ways we kind of have to fight that. I would say right now, contemporary dance, they're relying the newer people are relying predominantly on the songs that they choose. And I'd rather see more of the kind of research and stuff that I've been doing. But what's going on, as we see in the Super Bowl and stuff like that, keep an eye not so much on contemporary concert dance, but on hip hop and Latin dance, and see where they go with this. Because there are ways that they're telling the stories that are different, and the sheer act of how those bodies move is amazing. It's a great question. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. It's just like, oh, it's there. Yeah.
My name is Kit Turin, and Liz, I was wondering, was there a point where you realized, and maybe it was with Good Jew, I need to sort of step into real deep personal vulnerability, as well as having that be one of the creative energies when working with groups, be they dancers or not dancers?
Well, I'm sad to say actually that what threw my life into everything was my mom's death, and that was when I was 27. So that's what made me start dancing with old people, because I wanted old people to welcome. That's why I'm familiar with heaven, by the way. I mean, I've been, and then I also made a piece about when I went to New York, I did go-go dancing to survive I made a piece about that. After making those two pieces, which were really personal, I think I was kind of ready for almost anything. But the question, another question about personal, which is something I raise with all my colleagues at school, is, artists are supposed to be personal, but we're not only personal. Like, we know how to make boundaries and permeable membranes, so you don't know everything about me. And I'm trying to get my colleagues, my professors, the other disciplines, to let themselves be personal too. The idea that you're going to keep a more professional person is a less personal person, I don't think so. But what are the mechanisms and membranes that we can either borrow from our understanding or theirs, how we make that work? Yeah, maybe a couple of weeks. I don't know. If people are willing to go, we're going to be a little bit over time. Are you okay with that? And if anybody needs to leave, please leave. Okay.
I have to say, Liz, did I do it right? Oh, I'm Randy Steiner, hi. And I have to say, I had no idea how someone is going to talk about choreography and Judaism. I thought, oh, this sounds so reconstructionist. You're going to reconstruct how these two go together. And now that you've spoken, I feel like I'm not going to be able to look at dance the same way anymore. You opened this bunch of doors in my head. And you also made me so proud of Jewish women and men. But I must say that in your time, you were just, talk about the glass ceiling, you just kept pushing and pushing, and you just, nobody let you stop. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Are you okay? You're going a little late, Sid?
Well, because you blushed so quickly, we have more time.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, Suzanne Richmond. Oh, yes. My husband did your first website. It was a
while ago.
Yeah, well, it was 23 years ago. My son was 3, and you had a big writers' conference.
Thank you.
Anyway.
And thank you.
My question was, building on what you said about the political activism and the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
When the woman was jumping up on the table back and forth, I had this image, well, you showed me the image of women with the Epstein women. And it seems to me that, okay, if you're subtle and you're telling a story and you're going deep in the research, you don't really need all the words. But if you're driving a political message, could not your dance be paired with a few cogent messages in a political campaign to just, that's an advertisement for transparency, for unredacted, for freedom of speech, for example.
It certainly could be. It could be. Yeah, I think.
Find somebody.
I'm really interested not just in my work, but in so much work being applied, like the nature of how we can apply any of this to. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Stacy Foyer. I was really struck when you said, I think in the beginning, how do people not see me as the heir to the slumlord? And so that's really where my question is coming from. You're obviously working with dancers who have their own lived experiences, their own experiences of trauma, discrimination. In both your explicitly Jewish pieces and your non-explicitly Jewish pieces, how do you work with your dancers to have them come to maybe not understanding the particular experience that you're communicating, but a way of making that experience something that everyone can access and see in their own way?
Thank you, and actually, Martha might have something to say about that, but I think when I made The Good Jew, I happen to be the only Jewish person in the company, but the African American people didn't feel black enough. everybody struggles with these purists' ideas about the nature of their identity and their relationship to community. So in that piece, for example, helping people tell that own story, and we spend a lot of time in rehearsals searching through that personal material. A lot of the movement that's made comes out of their personal stories, even though it might end up applying to some rabbinic thing or something else. The movement itself arises out of what they make or out of our training. With Wicked Bodies, it took a very long time because they had to figure out which they were. How are they going to be a part of this? Could they, and I happen to love that process. So I'll just say this about rehearsals. I know we're thinking when we rehearse or we go into planning meetings that we're thinking about the thing ahead that we're making. But I like to say, this is also our life. Like, I'm in more rehearsal time than I am in performance time for sure. So I better make it worth it. And what makes that worth it is how everybody can bring their personal story in, how each person can belong in that moment. And yes, it takes longer, and yeah, you have to go around the table at the beginning of a meeting and everybody say something about whatever. But I don't understand how else it works. And in the end, I think there's a great payoff. And then each of them is capable of doing workshops and stories. Oh, Deborah's here too, right in front of you, Deborah Kaplow, who was one of the first people in the first company. Also, we were trying to figure that stuff out, how to make that work. And I'll just say as another plug for the book, the first big chunk of the book is on what do we mean by lived experience? How do we harvest it? And then how do we submit our lived experience to other people's? And that's where I think art comes in. Yeah.
Liz, I think, I'm trying to be mindful of the time. We're gone a little bit.
Yeah.
Liz, you may be around a little bit. If people have some personal questions, that's fine. But I just want to thank you for, not just for today, but the body of work is just so overwhelmingly brilliant. You just break barriers left and right and have opened our eyes to so many things. And thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. And I wish you b'hatzlacha. Good luck in your continued creative journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. My old friends, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And come visit. Well, visit the website, come visit, call me, be in touch, all that. Which prayer? The one we